Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle!
The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is campeón! All creatures great and small!
¡De la Vega! ¡No me pongo de pie! ¡De rodillas!
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Gold Cup seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. I am Jeremiah O'Shan. It is Friday. We are at Long Acres, and I am joined by Niko Moreno on what we learned this week. How you doing, Niko?
I'm doing great, Jeremiah. It's sunny and yet slightly cold. This is the P&W days that I love, right? When the sun comes out and, you know, it's chilly, but just it's dry. It just feels like a good day. Training felt.
It's like perfect training weather
Perfect training weather. And I don't know about you, Jeremiah, but I don't know. The energy was positive. The you know, very little training they did today because it was a light day. Just felt intense, but yeah, there was just good vibes here at the training facility.
The thing that has sort of stood out to me this whole week is a sort of underlying confidence in their preparation. I think there was sort of a weight that was lifted off of them in the last game where they got those 4 goals. And honestly, getting the 4 goals is more important than the specific score line. The fact that they showed that they could do that, and that there's not some mystical quality about Minnesota United that is, dominating them, to get that first win of the season, I think sort of was a good reminder that, they're playing with a certain freedom. It's a weird situation. It feels to me like, in a way, they get to sort of live the life of an underdog, but have the confidence of a favorite. Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
And I think there's a lot more pressure internally, probably on Minnesota United here, even at home. Honestly, the fact that this game is in Minnesota may end up being in the Sounders' favor. I just got this overwhelming sense that this is a group that really believes in what they're doing right now.
And I think although I do believe they already have the confidence, I think that if they gained something out of this particular game beyond the obvious, that is scoring 4 in a team that has been very stingy with defense and allowing
only
goals,
given up 4 goals one other time this year, by the way,
which is a great stat. But to me, it was more impressive that Seattle, a team that we have talked about the fact that they have let go of certain games and they've been equalized and things, can take 2 goals in 8 minutes in the first half in really just extra time. The first 45 go perfect. You give up 2 soft goals in 8 minutes, possibly 3 because Rosales ends up missing that shot in front of goal. And then this Sounders team can go into the locker room. Brian Smetzer can give his team probably guidance and composure to get him out there to perform in the way they did in the second half. To me, gives them the confidence of saying, even when things go wrong, even when we allow certain mental lapses to happen, we can stay in the game and we can get out there and win it. So that was something huge that I thought happened in that game one that maybe it's not getting highlighted enough, but that I think goes into what you just mentioned, which is the overwhelming amount of confidence that I don't think they're trying to project, is just the reality. Like,
right.
you and I see it because it's here. But if you are just someone listening to the scrums, you might not.
It's more body language
Exactly.
and the way that they're, you see them. And it's not that they're saying anything that's, bulletin board material or whatever.
Correct.
They're just talking about how, we know what it's like to be in these situations. We know how important, Jordan today had a quote about how we understand the importance of stacking little moments because because you never know when those little moments are going to turn into a big moment, right? So it's winning your duels, connecting your passes, doing all the little stuff. It's not about hitting the home run ball. It's about doing all these little things that add up, and then all of a sudden you're at the end of it. And I said this on the show earlier this week, but I'll repeat it. I do think there's something to be said about the way this game played out, that it actually was a bigger confidence builder for them to jump out to a 3-0 lead, to give up those 2 goals, and then to hold on, rather than if they had just won 3-0.
Totally agree.
Because if they had just won 3-0, you would just be like, okay, well, they jumped out to a 3-0 lead, and then Minnesota decided we don't have anything to play for, and they packed it in. But that's not what actually happened. What happened is they got 2 goals back early. They had the whole second half. The whole second half was competitive. And the Sounders just said, no, we're not going to let you. I mean, Minnesota, in some ways, had better play in the second half, I think, than they did in the first half, and that they had more of the game. But they never had good looks. They never really challenged the Sounders. I mean, they made life difficult in some ways for the Sounders, but the Sounders were protecting a lead. They didn't need to go out and challenge Minnesota. I think, I know Minnesota after the game, of course, they're going to tell themselves, well, we showed that we can get back, and that was really important. I don't buy that at all. I think they know exactly that the fact that the second half was competitive and they weren't able to do anything in it is, I think, if anything, a real confidence builder for the Sounders.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. I do think that, there is a possibility that the moments that did go well for Minnesota can motivate or influence some changes for Eric Ramsey to maybe.
But do we really think that's going to happen? That's the thing. Is that do we really think Minnesota's going to come out and press?
No. I would say they're going to be more. They're going to take more gambles. So within their pragmatic way of just sitting back, I do believe that they're going to be selective on, similar to this, which was in game 2 more organic, where it's like, man, we got to go chase this game.
Mm-hmm.
So let's really bring it for 8 minutes. There might be moments in this game where they're like, let's go ahead and go for it for 10 minutes, 9 minutes, and then let's sit back down, right?
Yeah, I mean,
just to kind of press them a little bit, make them uncomfortable. And I do believe that Seattle was so good at breaking them down that there's got to be some doubt in Eric Ramsey, right? That we're not going to just be able to just sit and bunker, because they just completely took us apart. So if we continue to do that, we have to be able to do something. And there are the personnel changes, which I think are eminent. I think that Yeboah starts. I think that Hangwane will play as a wingback, because obviously the team that doesn't play with wingers, your wingback is going to be that guy that's
anything
gonna,
Markanich goes to the bench.
Anything Markanich goes to the bench. And Hangwane is a guy that when you do need him to get forward, he's just going to be so much more electric, so much more elite, so much more effective, that I feel like those are the things that are for sure going to come from Eric Ramsey. Going back to the whole point, I do believe that Seattle is going into this game with a huge amount of confidence in a team that understands that with the way they played this game too, the fluidity, the intensity, the numbers going forward, that they can easily go to Minnesota and get a result.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that that's where it's going to be interesting, is sort of the chess game and the little tweaks that Minnesota might make, because it is notable that they've had probably 3 really good looks in this game. All 3 of those looks came off of or turnovers, really, and they've shown that the Sounders at times can be a little sloppy, and that they've taken advantage of the Sounders. I don't know it's entirely fair to call it sloppy. It's overly aggressive when they don't necessarily need to be. In the first half or the first game, it was Yamar stepping to a challenge that he doesn't really need to step to, right? And they end up getting in behind. And this one, it was Jordan, whether it was not, it was Jordan's fault entirely. It's Jordan trying to make something happen on a play where he doesn't really need to make something happen. Again, Yamar in the other chance is him. It was him trying to make a play that he just doesn't have to try to make. And so I do think Minnesota probably thinks that there are moments like that where they, especially if they can get the Sounders into a situation where they're getting a little desperate and they're pressing, because I don't think the Sounders want this to go to penalties. I think Minnesota is probably a lot more comfortable with it. Like Minnesota would be very happy to have this game end 0-0 and take their chances in penalties. I do not think for a moment that the Sounders feel the same way.
No, they want to be able to control this game for the majority of it. You're not going to have full control of it, but the tempo has to be run by the Sounders. The way that the Sounders want to possess, they have to be able to, one, defend themselves when they have possession, and when they're offensively, be patient enough, but be able to, just like you did in game 2, get those guys inside of those spaces without being receptible to just easy turnovers. So I do feel like Seattle is going to be more of a protagonist, but at the same time, when it comes to this Minnesota team, you need to not let them get back into the game with what you just talked about: mistakes, set pieces, and something that I asked about today that I am a little bit concerned of is the refereeing. I mean, if you look back at that game too, man, I just saw it again this morning, and Jefferson Diaz is getting away with all kinds of stuff, pushing, stepping on people. I counted, I think, 5 fouls where he got a warning, which is insane. So to me, I really hope that the Sounders go into this game very composed, so they don't allow a silly yellow or, God forbid, a silly red to completely ruin what they've been able to build in game 2, and it essentially just completely affects the game.
Not to get sidetracked, I do. We didn't talk about this earlier in the week, so we may as well bring it up. What did you make of the no call on the Danny Musovsky challenge there? Was it Diaz that made that challenge?
Yeah, it was Jefferson Diaz. He was getting away with murder. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought that it was.
He doesn't play on the ball at all.
He doesn't play the ball at all. I think he collides against the player. They're again, refereeing changes sometimes, and I feel like from referee to referee. But when I've spoken to referees in Colombia, there's always when it goes to those types of challenges, there is a way. If you're running with the ball carrier and you are trying to fight the ball 50-50, then that's allowed. But he never gets next to him. He's diagonally coming in.
You can say it's shoulder to shoulder, but he's not playing he's not trying to win the ball. He's trying to knock him off of his run.
And then he extends his arm completely and almost hits him with the top part of his arm. I just don't know how you don't see that as a foul. I was on the radio call for 1360 AM in Spanish, and I cannot yell enough things into the mic. I went on to say that I think the referee did not just need glasses, but maybe binoculars and a telescope to call the game, because he was just acting like nothing was going on. So just to conclude, I thought that it was absolute doxo. I thought that it was clear as day. And honestly, for this sort of situations, this coach should be concerned about the way some of these referees are handling the games, because it's just so obvious.
And again, not to get too off subject here, but another example of that is sort of like the unwillingness of VAR to sometimes step into situations. You look at the Luis Suarez thing that he ended up getting suspended for, where he donkey kicks the Andy Nahar in the box. Now he's in the Suarez is the attacker, so it wouldn't have been a penalty, but that is a clear red card.
It's a clear intentional move.
Right, exactly. And so I don't understand why, if that's not VAR stepping in, what is VAR for.
And I love Miami going after Disco. Like, you guys are setting a precedent where you guys are, if the referee didn't catch it, how are you guys going back?
That's what the disciplinary committee does, dude.
That's the job, ain't it? I mean, am I crazy?
No, I don't understand. I don't understand that argument. They are acting as if the disciplinary committee is not a thing that is regularly making rulings like this. Now, they aren't routinely handing down suspensions after the fact, but this is pretty egregious. And they certainly, it's not without precedent. I heard somebody saying, well, if there's things like that happen in every game. No, there are not.
No,
I'm sorry. There are not situations like that in every game that are going unpunished. This is a perfect example of disciplinary committee stepping in and saying VAR messed up here and they should have caught it. And this should be a red. Now, I'm not saying that's what it would be different if they were stepping in and giving a red to Jefferson Diaz for the call on Masovsky. That's a little bit more of a gray area of like, look, the referees have to be allowed to call the game. But in this situation, like the Miami Nashville game, that's
because that's a soccer play, right?
Exactly.
Jefferson Diaz is making a soccer play.
Exactly.
The other one is just
it's just him.
It's just Luis Suarez.
Being a shit. Yeah.
Again, nothing is sidetracked, but it really makes my blood boil how Inter Miami just enables his behavior.
Yeah.
I don't care who he is. Look, he's a legendary player. I grew up watching him just be this monster striker, but that doesn't mean that he's not a piece of S, right? I mean, it really is a guy that is out there just trying to hurt somebody. Like
very strange.
The way he swung that, I mean, that's not a soccer move. So just to leave it at that, and getting back to the Sounders game, I do have some concerns because of the way that the games have been called.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Brian talked about it today. There was this narrative, and the Sounders have been caught up in moments where mentally they're allow something like that to spark an impulsive move. Danny Masovsky is going to likely start this game. He's, enemy number one when it comes to that, right next to Nuhu. So, you do have to make sure that is something that you're talking to the guys about. And I know Brian is going to be on the ball, and he probably talked about it already, but I hope that after the question, he goes back and just reiterates, guys, let's make sure that we
can't be taken.
Let's not give them
ball.
the game. Right?
I mean, it was, and the Obed, he mentioned Obed Vargas picking up the yellow card, which ends up not being super consequential, but that's the kind of thing you can't just take a yellow card where you pick the ball up and then you toss it away. Kind of, and the thing that the worst part about not to beat up on Obed here, but the worst thing about the Obed yellow is that Minnesota's not even looking for a quick restart. They don't look for quick restarts, especially not in the first half.
Not even when they were down.
Right, exactly. So you don't need to do that. Even look, if it's late in the game and you're just trying to, do some gamesmanship or whatever. But that was Obed just being sort of not thinking about what he was doing. And that's the exact kind of card you cannot afford to take, because sure, he wasn't ejected in this game and it probably won't make a difference, but you want to save those cards for fouls you need to make. You want to take a yellow when you need to stop a counterattack, not when you are just upset with something.
And that's where I'm going, because you bring up a great moment there with what happened to Obed, because that led up out of frustration, because the referee was not only allowing way too much, but there's that moment when I think Christian goes down with the hit of the head. Yeah. Triantis is getting into it with Yamar and Albert Rusnak, and they're going at it, and they're doing all these gestures. All of that was a build out eventually of just him being frustrated. So that's exactly where I went with my question, is they probably know that as well, right?
Right.
Triantis is a former Sunderland, he's played in the Premier. He understands that there is a little bit of, sometimes you got to get people off their game. So mentality is going to be, to me, just as important as anything else that Seattle will do offensively.
Yeah. That said, I think the other thing we learned this week is the Sounders feel like they figured out something that works offensively.
Correct.
And they are going to do that. That is plan A. It almost certainly is going to be Danny Masovsky starting up top again, and it's Jordan Morris out wide. I thought you had a really good interview though with Freddie Juarez this week. And if you haven't listened to it, I would urge everyone to go on our YouTube page and find the interview with Freddie Juarez. But one of the things that he really does a good job of articulating is he's talking about the way the Sounders have been building this attack for 3 years. That 3 years ago, they started this project of reshaping the way that they build out. And in year one, they were really good at positional defending, but the attack was somewhat lacking. They made some improvements last year. And then this year is really where they've been able to take it to a new level where they are effectively able to get 5-6 players into the attack on a regular basis. And he did a really good job, I thought, of explaining how they get those players into the attack and the balancing act. And one of the secret, not secret weapons, but one of the keys to making that work is that you have 2 double pivots who are both really good attacking players. We saw Obed score 2 goals. He almost scored a third. He has been a huge, even though the numbers don't totally articulate it, he has been much more effective as an offensive player this year than he has ever been before. But the other thing I really liked was the way that Christian had 2 secondary assists in this game, both of them driving into the box and sending in crosses. And that you have 2 double pivots who are capable of doing that kind of stuff is sort of almost like a secret, like a superpower. It's something that allows you to do things that very few teams have 2 double pivots who are as good in the attack, but who can also defend in the way that Obed and Christian do.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Freddie was talking about how, he didn't even say we're good at it because he said we're still working on improving it, but getting a 3-1-6, so 6 players into the attacking end, who you can obviously call with one hand, right? You got your 4 attacking players of, let's just call it the 4-2-3-1. So obviously your striker, the 3 that come behind, and then your right back, which is most of the time Alex getting forward, and then one of those pivots. So that's 6 players making runs, pushing, finding pockets. Man, it's just it's unreal. And I appreciated Freddie for taking the time, because he does do such a good job at elaborating everything. And with that, what you just mentioned is how they're interchangeable, right? It's not just, usually that's the case, right? You have one out of the 2 pivots who's a true 6, and he's going to completely stay back. And although Roldan is usually the guy that stays back, there are times where he pushes. If he's able, because this is all part of it, right? Seattle did such a good job pressing Minnesota that it was creating a lot of clearances. Those clearances, it depended who got to that 50-50 ball. And if Seattle got it, everybody was running. So Christian Roldan, in one of the goals, I forgot which one it is, he picks up the ball. He's the one that pushes to the end line, crosses the ball, ends up in a goal, right?
I think it's the second of the 2 that he
maybe that's the second one. And he goes for everybody, because I thought that there was a lot of freedom between Albert and Jesus Ferreira, where they were interchangeable in their pockets. And I thought that it created a lot of chaos. And that's why I find it funny. I have we're not going to say his name, but there's a guy who I constantly talk to on X. He's a fan, and he's always talking about how he'd rather not see Albert in, and Albert has such a low stat line. The reality is that you need both of those guys, because they are interchangeable. And if Ferreira was able to get into those spaces, is because he's not having to do the Albert role. So it's the Sounders' superpower, as you call it, is collective play, and is cohesiveness, and is the fluidity and the sync of the way they're attacking the game. So that's all credit. And this is Niko Moreno, better known by some people as the Brian Smetzer hater. I think that he has done a great job at, obviously with his coaching staff, getting it all worked out, improving it, and then executing it. And that goes into also the mentality that he has put into the team. I love the fact that he challenged Obed. He said, look, you didn't have a good game 1. You know what? How are you going to respond? He challenged Jesus. He challenged Jordan. All these guys came out and just had a baller of a game from the first minute. So that's credit to Brian, because you're getting your guys the right mentality to perform and execute the game plan. And so I'm with it. I could not ask more of what the coaching staff has done to get this team where they are right now.
And I thought one of the other things that Freddie did a good job of articulating is that it's one thing to say we want to get numbers in the box. Everyone says that. Everyone said the trick is how you do that without suddenly becoming very vulnerable on going the other way. Because you throw numbers forward, oftentimes what that means is that you're then scrambling. And the key to being able to get those numbers in the box is the Sounders counter press. And it's winning those secondary balls, and it's keeping the pressure on and allowing you to sort of build and build and build. And I believe certainly the two goals that they scored, the second two goals that they scored were 100% the product of counter pressing. But the corner that they win to lead into the first goal is also the product of counter pressing. Yes. And this is really the key to what the Sounders are able to do, is if they can win those secondary balls, if they can, and it's not always, it's not always, an interception where you're stepping in front of someone. It's forcing them into a clearance, into a 50-50, and then winning the 50-50. That the Sounders did exceptionally well in this game was they won like every second ball. It was unreal. I think they ended up winning like 65% of the duels, but everything that was contested was going their way. It was really impressive, and it looks different than what when Minnesota scored their two goals. Those are really them pressure. That's a different kind of pressure. That's essentially stealing the ball and creating that and getting numbers going the other way. But it's like a fast break situation. The Sounders aren't necessarily creating fast break situations. What they're creating is just overloads. Correct. And that's what I feel like a little bit more sustainable in terms of just kind of getting numbers.
Yeah, of course. And this is a interesting subject because I had a Minnesota person come at me because I called Seattle gave up two soft goals. The two soft goals is not an indictment on Minnesota not deserving credit, because they absolutely they deserve credit for creating the opportunity, then making that opportunity and turn it into a goal, right? And so when it comes to that sort of situation, that pressing in that particular moment, that is practice, right? But that is a counter attack, right? It's just picking up the ball, then everybody just gets forward and you create the moment. Seattle just doing it differently, and it's more sustainable because it's so designed that it's just easier for it to happen.
Yeah, you're not so much the way I look at it is the Sounders are sort of forcing Minnesota into a defensive posture, and then they're overwhelming them. What Minnesota did on those is that they essentially almost lulled the Sounders into a fake sense of security. And so soft, you're right. Soft has a negative connotation, but I think what you're saying is that the Sounders sort of allowed that to happen to themselves. Exactly. It wasn't necessarily that Minnesota forced them into making these mistakes.
Yeah. So exactly what it is. And that's what I was trying to explain to him, is that when I say a soft goal, is Brian uses it a lot when it's a preventable goal, when it's a mistake on his defense. It's more an indictment on the defense or his team.
And it is the kind of goal that the Sounders have been prone to giving up, especially in the post-Leagues Cup part of the schedule. You can go through the goals that they've allowed. You go back to the Miami game, they gave up a goal like that. I bet you we could find 5 or 6 goals at least that they've given up that were sort of like this. And so they are a little prone to giving up those kind of goals. And I'll be honest, if the Sounders lose this game, it will probably be because of a goal like that. Yep. Because that is sort of their weakness, is that they can sometimes get wrapped up in getting numbers forward. And as a result, they make decisions that are not always sound defensively. And that's sort of been the trade-off this year, is that they were so good at positional, at what they call rest defense, the last 2 years, where they almost always had numbers behind the ball ready to defend counters. And I think what they saw is that was limiting their ceiling, and that was sort of making them a reactive team instead of a proactive team. And they have sort of flipped they've sort of like changed the dial on the risk tolerance. And they've said, maybe we don't need to be so careful about defending counters, and we need to just create more pressure. And that's led to them scoring a lot more goals. But the trade-off is you give up goals like this.
Yeah, and sometimes you take that trade in, right? Because
I mean, it's more fun to watch.
Exactly, and it's worked, and that's another part of this, another layer, if you will, of this Sounders team that has been impressive all year long. Because it's not something that's happening right now, and sometimes it doesn't even depend on who's on the field, because the concepts are so ingrained in the players that you come and go and really perform. Now the eliteness and the effectiveness in which you do it does change clearly when you don't have an Ovid, when you don't have a Christian, when you don't have a Jordan, and so it changes a little bit. But that's all credit to the Sounders and the way they've been able to dial it up.
Yeah, and kind of one of the funny things that this discussion came out of is you and I were talking about what formation were the Sounders playing?
Yes.
In the last game, and was it really any different than it was in the first game? And on paper they called it a diamond formation. I don't know if I really ever saw it that way, but you look at the heat maps and it looks maybe like a 3-5-2. But I think one of the things that Freddie really articulated is, look, whether it plays as a 3-5-2 or a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2, it's all about the principles of play. And the formation is going to look different depending on what we're able to do.
Sure.
If we have the ball on their end and we're able to press forward, it's going to look more like a 3-5-2. If we're having to defend a lot more, it's probably going to look more like a 4-2-3-1.
Right.
And so that's really the only difference is not so much their starting formation. It's really more about what they're able to do with the ball. But I think that what they did do differently in this game is that they said, look, we need to take more risks going forward. And it's been interesting because I still am not a believer that all things being against most opponents, that Danny Musovski is the better option at forward. But against Minnesota, especially with the way that they play, I think it's been working out very well because it gives Jordan a lot more freedom to do other things. And Jordan seems like the kind of player who is able to exploit, not necessarily in front of goal, but he's able to exploit some of the weaknesses of Minnesota, and that helps unlock other things. And Danny is just, he's very good at getting in the box, getting himself looks in the box.
And Freddie talked about there are just some guys that smell where the ball may rebound, and he does that. I mean, you got to give him credit because he just is at the right place at the right time. I'm totally with you. I mean, I'm constantly going, or I find myself in conversations with Ari Lillenwall and Noah Reif, who are the Danny Musovski. They love Danny, right? And I definitely think that I don't, I'm a hater on Danny's side. It's hard for me sometimes, but I do agree with you that, going back and rewatching again this morning, I still think he had a very modest game, but I guess he's just occupying certain spaces that at least is creating.
He's in the box all the time.
Exactly. And that's what maybe allowing Jordan to do other stuff. And this works specifically with Minnesota.
Exactly.
And now I wouldn't say the same if it's San Diego.
If it's San Diego and they're going to have a lot more of the ball, I don't know that you can afford to do that. But look, they're not playing San Diego right now. They're playing Minnesota, and this makes a lot of sense for Minnesota. Well, let's take a little bit of a break. When we come back I want to talk a little bit more about the Western Conference in general and sort of what we've learned about the playoff field beyond the Sounders. But you're listening to Nos Arietes. Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible through our paid subscribers. Plans start as low as $30 a year and allow us to remain independent and mostly ad-free. Subscribers get access to all our written and podcast content, including a full-text RSS feed and a mostly ad-free podcast feed that includes every show in one spot. If you really like what we're doing, though, I'd encourage you to sign up at our higher tiers, which include all sorts of various perks. The most popular of those is our members-only Discord, where the real Sounders sickos hang out. I know I've called this group the smartest, funniest, and best-informed Sounders fans in the world, but it's more than the rough equivalent of a Sounders Mensa meeting. Discord is where we make things happen, like for real. You know the promotion the Sounders ran that offered fans the opportunity to trade in their Messi jersey for a Paul Rothrock one? That originated in our community. You'll not only be the first to know about stuff, but you also have a semi-direct line to the movers and shakers at the Sounders organization. If you want to be one of the totally normal people who occupy the Sounder at Heart Discord, just become a supporter of Sounder at Heart. Anyway, thanks for listening, and go Durs.
Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Welcome back to Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. All right, well, before we get into the rest of the playoff field, there were a couple bits of news that were worth sharing. Christian Roldan was named MLS Best 11. He is I think he's the 11th different Sounder to earn that honor. Yamar and Raul Ruidiaz are the only two that have done it twice. But it's then he also got called into the U.S. national team. Reed Baker Whiting has also been called into the U21s. But what's I thought the most interesting thing about Christian getting into the national team, getting into the best 11 is, him and Diego Chara are the only two players who earn their first best 11s 10 years or more into their MLS career.
Wow, that's an interesting stat.
And I think that what's interesting about that is that, for so long, Christian Roldan has been sort of like this guy who Sounders fans love, who I think people who watch the league closely have always appreciated, but has this sort of under the radar, underappreciated type of moniker about him. And that seems to be getting blown out the window now because he's getting all sorts of plaudits.
And the irony there is that statistically, which is usually what people look at,
yes,
he's had better years, right?
Way better years.
2022 is the one that always comes up for me. But now that it's 10 years in, and it's funny that you mentioned Chara next to him, because if there's any other player that's been a pillar for his club is Diego Chara. Now, he's done it specifically right in the midfield. I think that Christian, just the same, has been a pillar for success. I mean, he's been incredible, crucial, fundamental for everything that the Sounders have done, regardless of position. But yeah, 10 years in, now you're just giving him his due credit. And it's funny because he comes in a year where he's not creating a whole bunch of assists. He's not creating a whole bunch of goals. But you could just tell by the body of work, the amount of ground that he covers, the duality of his play, the leadership, everything about Christian Roldan this year, including the amount of minutes that he's just absolutely just absorbed. It's crazy. And I feel like that has shown both at the U.S. men's national team level, him getting called up again. I think it's great. As much as people still hate it, I think that he's a guy that this away from a potential injury in the future, closer to the World Cup, he's going to be in it.
Yeah, at this point, I would be more surprised if he wasn't in the team than he would.
Absolutely.
If he is.
So to me, it's just it's important that he does get that validation.
Yeah.
He probably doesn't need it because he's just that guy. But I feel like it's important. He's got to feel good. It's absolutely got to feel good that now finally people are recognizing it. They're seeing it. Something that you and I have said for such a long time. I take constant heat, and now I'm just looking for it. Is the whole him and Gio Reyna. I think Gio Reyna is a pecho frio. He has a huge iceberg in his chest, and he's not a guy that I would build my national team around.
Back in the national, I'm a little shocked that
when he's been a bench player. He's been riding the bench. He's lack of minutes. I mean, all this stuff. And I guess I understand that he's talented, but the way people just like, oh, I would take 100 times more of Gio than I would of a Christian Roldan. I was like, man,
that team will dominate you. You give me 11 Christian Roldans versus 11 Gio Reynas. That's not even a competitive game.
Yeah, it's crazy. But anyways, I just wanted to throw that jab out there. But regardless of, I'm just happy to just sit here and be able to applaud him and just give him that credit that maybe people haven't seen in the past. And, he talked about it this week that, he's taken parts of the game from so many players, Gonzalo Pineda and Osvaldo Alonso,
Eric
Nicolas
Freeberg.
Guerrero. The Eric Freeberg what threw me off a little
I know,
bit.
that was me too.
Yeah, I had no idea. So, everything, he's a very methodical guy. And I do believe that, and I've heard it from Gonzo himself that, he would sit there, watch video and he got that from Gonzo and just a whole bunch of things that if you could develop your game and you can always feel like you can grow, sky's the limit. And I feel like that's what we're seeing in, I know, year 30. How old is he now?
He's 30, yeah.
He's 30. Craziness, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's zoom out a little and talk about what we've learned from the MLS playoff field. I guess there's a game tonight, but there's so far only 3 teams have qualified for the next round. That's the Philadelphia Union, LAFC, and Vancouver. But the thing that's jumped out at me, and I don't know, I always thought the field was reasonably open, but it's even more wide open, I think, than I thought. Like, if the Sounders can get out of this round, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't feel like they have as realistic of a shot at MLS Cup as anyone. And I say that about teams in the West. I say that about teams in the East. There are no teams right now who, to me, look unbeatable. Do you feel the same way, or is it like, or your prior is still standing up?
No, it's something that I've learned this week.
Mm-hmm.
I really have. I really had it in my mind that, both sides, West and East, there were, it was a 2-team race on each side, and that was it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I still love Vancouver. They are a team that, seems to be balanced, seem to have all these things, but there was an injury to Daniel Rios. He might be out.
They still don't know. Brian White's still not fully back. Tristan Blackman's still not fully back. Ryan Gold still isn't fully back. There's some questions there.
Yeah, and they got pushed to the limit by a Dallas team that, look, give them their flowers for finding some traction, but they're not this amazing team.
No.
So they really got pushed to the limit by a team that's okay. And on the other side, LAFC, which was the other juggernaut, the first game against Austin, they looked very mortal.
Mm-hmm.
Now they went and they handled their business in the second game. But even then, you look back, Ozuni misses a PK that could have put it, I think it was 2-1 at the time. There were so many missed opportunities by a toothless, really, Austin FC.
I mean, they were giving away penalties like candy against, it was very strange. The thing about LAFC for me, and I've been saying this for a while, look, Sun and Bwanga are monsters. They are almost surely the best attacking tandem in league history. But I just am totally unconvinced that this team has anything outside of them. Like, I just am not. If for some reason if you can bottle them up, they are very vulnerable.
Yeah, if you don't give those two monsters real estate to run into, you don't, make easy turnovers where they're going to get in the race. Now, they got good players. I love Tillman. I think Delgado has been excellent for that team specifically. Obviously, they missed De Jesus that, he was out for the season, but still they've been able to manage. I think Segura has been a guy that regardless of where you put him, whether it's in the back line or a little bit higher, has been big. But I'm with you. I think I was under this, and they went on a streak. I mean, you can't.
They did. They went on a but it was also almost entirely powered by Sun and Bwanga.
100%. So, sometimes that's easy to kind of go against. So all around, I do feel like this is an open race on the West. You could even say that about the East. Philly already took care of business against Chicago, but that was also a very circumstantial game. Chris Brady doesn't start that game. It was 2 huge mistakes by the goalkeeper that were like, you would see it in a blooper reel.
Yeah.
Probably both of those in the not top 10 of the week. So it's really something that is said about right now. If the Sounders were to push their way through Minnesota, man, there could be a contender.
Yeah. And because San Diego has looked really vulnerable against Portland. I don't think Portland is going to spring the upset in this, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if they did. And San Diego will also most likely be without CJ Dos Santos, their goalkeeper, who I guess, broke his cheekbone, I think is what they,
Ouch.
I mean, it was brutal. He just got kicked right in the face. But they've just not looked, they I don't really know that they have a clear answer at the number 9. They, when they play, they look good, but I am not convinced that this is a team that is unbeatable. So I like the Sounders' chances again. If they get through, I like either of their chances. Either they're going to be hosting Portland or they're going to be going down to San Diego. And frankly, I'll take that. And then on the other side, it's Vancouver versus LAFC. Vancouver, I said this earlier this week, but I like Vancouver in this series. If you told me one of these teams is going to win 3-0, I think it's much more likely to be Vancouver. Vancouver feels a little bit more like a machine. You can take pieces out and it still works.
I would agree.
And I think that matches up pretty well with LAFC. But at the same time, if you're telling me that the Sounders have a chance to go to MLS Cup by going to Vancouver, I don't mind that. I'll take that, my chances there too. But I will say that Thomas Mueller has really, I think, changed the whole conversation around Vancouver. 100%. And I think it's actually pretty cool because the thing that really convinced me of this was after Vancouver lost to Dallas in the season finale, they asked Mueller, well, do you feel like this gives Dallas a lot more confidence going into this? And he said, I don't know why it would. We outplayed them for 80 minutes down a man.
Yeah. And
I just feel like that sort of swagger. And this, like, Mueller is not here to play around. He's here to win trophies. And he's looked great. He has been, you never know what you're going to get when you bring in a player like that. But he's been everything you could have possibly asked. And I've been very impressed.
I was not a fan of the move. I really didn't think that he had this sort of commitment.
Yeah, I was not.
Just
I agree.
And getting this guys going in the right direction. He's a coach on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So many times you see him just get on the ball and kind of rally the troops, traffic control. Hey, let's slow it down. Hey, let's be careful. A couple of times the team was too rushed. They missed the ball and it was a turnover. He's yelling at them. Just don't do that. He's just a guy that affects the game in so many ways. Yeah. And I also feel it's important to what you just said. They've been with Laporta. They deal with just so many injuries, so many ways. Priso at times. Now you don't even know who they're going to really match up. I think Kenji Cabrera coming off the bench has been very, very good. They got Jay Nelson coming off the bench, just being a guy that's going to terrorize you, out wide with all his speeds, pace abuser. So they do have a lot of things. I like Vancouver. They were my pick to win the whole thing in my bracket, that we've discussed in the past. I still like it. I said it on Thursday with Soccer Down Here. I was like, they're my sexual chocolate led by Mr. Randy Watson. They play so fine. Won't you agree? Every time I see him, they play so fine. It's great to see him play. And it seems to be, at least in my opinion, something that could really limit what LAFC does. And yeah, that's why I think that Vancouver is definitely probably going to take that.
And then on the East, we have Cincinnati and Columbus. That's been a very competitive series. Columbus won game 2 4-0. The game goes back to Cincinnati. Columbus seems to sort of have Cincinnati's number a little bit. And then what is the other series?
It's Charlotte, New York. New York should have won that second game. Kalina had a baller of a game.
Yeah.
They are lucky, in my opinion, to push that to PKs, and then they win it in PKs. But New York, to me, still is the better team. What they do progressively with the ball, it's a lot simpler for them to get from point A to point B than it is for Charlotte, that just struggles so much to get the ball forward. They depend so much on Saha, and I'm not a Saha guy. I feel like he does more with the mic than with the ball. I feel like it's all about Saha, Team Saha.
Yeah. But don't say that. Oh, yeah, he's gonna come at you.
Yeah,
right? You can't say that. You're not allowed to say that.
Come at me. But the reality is that New York is the better team, and I'm always going to go for the better team, and I think that they'll get the best out of Charlotte. But it is a little bit wide open there. And in Miami, Nashville. Now, no Luis Suarez in that one. Nashville, I thought, had a great game plan in game 2. I thought that they outplayed him in many ways.
They've created the better early chances in both games. Yep. In all 3 games that they've played each other.
I agree.
And really, it comes down to whether or not Nashville can actually finish those chances, because they are creating plenty. Like Miami's defense is bad, and they're the team with the nuclear generator, the only team with the nuclear generator that is Messi, and that gives you a certain kind of advantages no matter what messes you get yourself into. But they are not, we saw it here. They are not unbeatable. I would not be at all surprised if Nashville ends up pulling an upset there.
No, Sam Surge needs to do more. That's 3 games against Inter Miami, has 1 goal, and he came off of a PK. He needs to be a killer inside the 18. They have to be able to take advantage of those moments that Miami needs. Rodrigo De Paul has been as underwhelming as anything, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, he's been meh to me the whole time. I heard Franco Panizo had something about him flying to Argentina to watch a concert after they lost game 2. I mean,
really?
He's so like nonchalant about things. And then I think they asked Javier Mascherano about it, and he's like, "Well, I don't tell guys what to do with their private life." That's fine. That's fine if you want to be that guy. But don't be surprised if guys aren't committed when he's taking a trip to.
Yeah, well, how long
Argentina.
is a flight from Miami to Argentina?
I mean, probably 10 hours at the very least. I mean,
that's a lot. That's a lot of extra miles to just throw on your body for no reason.
Right. And beyond that, just a mentality component. Like you're really not all but in. I mean, this is game 3 of a playoff game. It's the total opposite of Mueller, right?
Right.
Mueller, bigger career, World Cup winner as well. And you got Rodrigo De Paul younger, and he's going to do whatever. I mean, it's just the difference of like what you get out of a superstar sometimes.
Yeah. Who do you like in that Columbus-Cincinnati series at this point?
I still like Cincinnati. I think Columbus did. I think that they were very fortunate to get the game the way it went. I think the red card flipped the game on its head. Opportunist is what I think that Columbus was in that game, but I still don't know if they have enough offensive power to make it on a second game. I don't know if Cincinnati is going to give them as much as they did. And honestly, it was a Cincinnati team with no intensity. I feel like at home, they're going to be able to just put it together.
All right. Well, that's a good place, I think, to call this. Niko, thank you again for joining us. You can follow him on Blue Sky, El Rolo, NW. You're, of course, doing Pool So Sports. As you're seeing this week, he also does video content for Sounder at Heart on YouTube. He's, of course, on Lobbing Scorchers. Niko, thank you again for joining me.
No problem. I think that the last thing I have in my notes here that I don't know if we touched on is just another thing that we learned this week that is important for you guys to know is that the team is as healthy as it can be. Alex Roldan seems to be totally okay, which I think most people knew. Kim Ki-hee has been full on practice, although we haven't heard where he's at.
Yeah.
Ryan Kent full on. Aside from obviously Pedro and Ariola, I mean the team is as healthy as it gets. So,
which bodes well for if they can get out of this round again. It gives them options going forward. I will also add one more note. We're doing a watch party tomorrow, Saturday at Fast Fashion in Soto. It's on Sounder at Heart if you want to get more information about it. If you RSVP, we'll give you some stickers if you show up, and we should have a good time. They have good pizza, good beer, and it's a 1:00 start. It's an all ages venue. It's obviously free to attend, and we hope to see everybody. And if you do, please come say hi.
Yeah, I will try to stop by. My daughter has a game in Starfire at 2:45. So I might try to just make a quick stop and then
in the morning,
then head over to Starfire.
2:45. You're gonna miss the post game.
I know. It's part of being a soccer dad. Yeah,
exactly.
What's a Starfire yesterday when it felt like the sky was gonna fall because it was raining so hard. But thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you to the audience. It's always great to just sit here and chat it up about the Sounders.
Absolutely. All right, you're listening to. Or I'm Jeremiah Shan signing off for Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, and we will catch you next time.
Let's go f***ing Sounders.